Alright, today we are working with solving one- and two-step equations. And the first thing we want to do is look at the inverse operation to the different operations that we have here. So the opposite of addition is subtraction. The opposite of subtraction is addition. The opposite of multiplication is division. And the opposite of division is multiplication. So let's read the directions. The directions say, solve each equation for the given variable. You'll notice that there's an x and a b and a w and a k and so on. You must show your steps. It is not okay just to guess and check what your answer is going to be. So you must show your steps with each one. You should always get these problems right because you can check them. So it's always important to check your answers, and if you do that, then you will be able to get the right answer every time. So as we're looking at number one, we want to take a look and figure out what it is that we're solving for. The x is what we want to know, and so the x, we've got to figure out what's happening to it. What is happening to the x? Well, it's being subtracted by 8. Notice that here's your x, and remember you're looking on the same side of the equal sign. And so the x is being subtracted by 8. And remember, we're doing the inverse operation. We're undoing the subtracted by 8. The inverse operation is add 8. So what we want to do, and what I do, is draw a line straight down the equal sign, and that way we know that it has to, if you do something to one side, you have to do the same thing to the other side. So it tells us to add 8 on both sides. And then we just make sure that negative 8 plus 8 does in fact give us 0, and those go away, and we're left with the x on the left-hand side. Then we look at the right-hand side and we notice that we have an integer problem here. So we do, and it's adding negative 12 plus 8. They're different signs, so we subtract the numbers and take the higher sign. So then our answer is x equals 4. Now what we want to do here is go ahead and check our answer to make sure that it is in fact correct. So we're going to check it, and when we check it, we're just taking that negative 4 and we're putting it back in place of the x. So we say negative 4 minus 8, and we want it to equal negative 12. Does negative 4 minus 8 equals negative 12? Well, remember that when we do subtraction, we add the opposite, and they're now the same signs, so we add the numbers and keep the sign. So in fact, it does give you negative 12. Let's take a look at number 2. Number 2, again, we're going to separate the left side from the right side, and we look at the b. The b has a negative 9 attached to it by addition. So what we want to do is we want to do the opposite of negative 9, which is positive 9. And then, of course, we're going to look at negative 9 plus 9 and see that it is, in fact, 0. Negative 9 plus 9 is 0, so those go away. We're left with b on the left-hand side, and 2 plus 9 is 11. So let's go ahead and check that to make sure that it is correct. So we're taking that 11 and we're putting it back into the b. So we say negative 9 plus 11 is equal to 2. Is negative 9 plus 11 equal to? Absolutely. So we know that we are correct. Now, one thing that we did not write down here is the steps that were taking place. If you look at it, b is being subtracted by 9. You see that there's a negative 9 here, and if you were to rearrange this, you would actually see b minus 9. So that's the way we know that it is subtracted by 9. So the opposite of that was to add by 9. Okay? Let's go on to number 3. Again, we're going to separate the left from the right-hand side of the problem, and we're going to look at the w again. This time, the w does not have an add with it or a subtract with it. It's actually a multiply problem. So w is being multiplied by negative 9. And remember, we're doing the inverse operation. So that means we're going to take and divide by negative 9. Remember, division whenever we're doing equations is just we're going to draw a line to show division, and we'll do that on both sides. What you do to one side, you must do to the other side. So that is, we're looking at the left-hand side. Negative 72 divided by negative 9 is a positive 8. And on the right-hand side, negative 9 divided by negative 9 is 1w. Now we don't really need that 1, so we can just rewrite that as 8 equals w. You always want to have a left and a right side if you start out with a left and a right side. So I don't want your answer just to be 8. I want your answer to be 8 equals w, or you can rearrange it to w equals 8. Let's check it. We have negative 72 is equal to negative 9, and we're going to take that 8 and we're going to replace the w, which means multiply by 8. So this is negative 72 on the left side, and on the right side it's negative 72 again, so we know we've done it correctly. Now let's look at number 4. Separating the left from the right sides of the equation, you notice that with the k there is a negative. Well, there isn't a number, but remember that you can always put a number 1 in front of the k as an understood 1. Now what's happening to the k is that it is being multiplied by a negative 1. So, what's the opposite? The opposite operation is to divide by negative 1. So if we divide by negative 1 on both sides, negative 1 divided by negative 1 is a positive 1, k, and 32 divided by negative 1 is a negative 32. Again, we don't need that 1 in front of the k, so we're just going to make it k equals negative 32. Let's check it. So we'll have negative 1 times negative 32 is equal to 32. And what we have to do is just see, is negative 1 times negative 32 equal to positive 32? And we say yes. It is correct. We know we've done it a good job. Number 5. Again, we're going to separate our equation, left side, right side. What we look at here is that this time the p is being divided by 5. Remember, the opposite operation from division is multiplication. So we are going to multiply by 5 on both sides in order to get rid of the 5. So we're going to multiply this side by 5 and this side by 5. Now on the left-hand side we see that that's a fraction, so we're going to put it over 1. And when we multiply fractions, you can multiply straight across, so that's 5 times 1, p, and this is 1 times 5. So then this would be, I'm just going to write it over here, 5p divided by 5. But what is 5 divided by 5? Well, that is in fact 1. Also, what you could do is look at the diagonals and see if you can cross-cancel those. And you can. I can divide both of those 5s by a 5 evenly. So 5 divided by 5 is 1. 5 divided by 5 is 1. And we are ready to write 1p. On the right-hand side, we can see that negative 20 times 5 is negative 100. But remember, you don't have to have that 1 there, and so p is equal to negative 100. Let's check it. All we have to do to check it is to plug that negative 100 back in for p. So negative 100 divided by 5, we want to see that that is negative 20. So we divide 100 by 5 and get 20, and since they're different signs, your answer is negative. So we know that we've done this one correctly. So there's one-step equations. Remember, think inverse operation or opposite operation. Now on the back side, you'll notice that we have some two-step equations. There are multiple things happening to the letter this time. So if you look at number 6 and we separate our equation into the left side and the right side, you'll notice that this time when you look at the n, there are two things happening to that n. The first thing that's happening, or one of the things that's happening to the n, is it's being multiplied by 9, and then it's also being added by 18. So what we want to write down is whatever is closest to the n, this is what we write first. So what's closest to the n this time is that it's being multiplied by 9. Remember that if it's next to each other, that means multiply. So it's being multiplied by 9. And what else is happening? It's being added by 18. So we're going to do the inverse operations, completely inverse operations. So instead of, and we're going to work our way up. Okay, we're going to work our way completely backwards. So instead of add 18, we are going to subtract 18. And instead of multiplying by 9, we are going to divide by 9. If you will write down what's happening first and how you're going to reverse everything, then it tells you exactly the steps to solve this problem. So it says first subtract 18. So I'm going to do a minus 18 on both sides, and all I have to do now is make sure that this is going to 0. Then 9 plus a negative 18 is a negative 9 on the right hand side, and we just drop down the 9 in. We've done the subtract 18, now we just need to divide by 9. So if I divide by 9 on both sides, I get 1 in is equal to negative 1. But again, you don't need that 1 in front, so we just write n equals negative 1. And of course, you can go back and double check that you did it right. Let's look at number 7. Again, we're going to separate the left side versus the right side. And this time, our x is on the right-hand side of the equation. And so we have to say, okay, what's happening to that x? Well, the x is what? It's being multiplied by a negative 1. So it's being multiplied by negative 1. How do I know that? Well, because remember that that minus has a 1 after it. In between the minus and the x is a 1. And when they're next to each other like that, the number and the letter, that means multiply. So it's being multiplied by negative 1. And then it's also being added by 3 because that's a plus 3. So it's being added by 3. Now we have to reverse the operations. So instead of adding by 3, I'm going to subtract by 3. We're reversing the operations. So let's subtract, we're doing subtract by 3, and then we also have to divide. The opposite of multiply by negative 1 is divide by negative 1. So it tells you exactly what to do. First, subtract by 3. And this is a negative 13 is equal to, those go away, and then we bring down that whole negative 1x. Then it says divide by negative 1. So this becomes a 1x on the right-hand side, and negative 13 divided by negative 1 is a positive 13. And remember that 1x in front is not necessary, so we just write x equals 13. And then you can check it. Number 8. Separate the left and the right side of the equation, and we have to figure out what's happening to the m. Well, the m is being first divided by 9. It's also being subtracted by 1. Remember, you look at the right-hand side of the side that has the letter, and the letter is being divided by 9 and subtracted by 1. And so we have to reverse those. When we reverse them, we start with the last thing that happened. So then we reverse the subtract by 1 and we add by 1. Then we're going to reverse the divide by 9 and we're going to multiply by 9. So here we're going to add by 1 on both sides. We bring down the m divided by 9, and negative 2 plus 1 is a negative 1. So we've done the add by 1. Now we need to multiply both sides by 9. So we are multiplying both sides by 9. Remember that we can put the 9 over 1, and we can cross cancel those diagonals, and each one of those becomes a 1. So this ends up giving you 1m equals negative 9, because negative 1 times 9, they're different signs, so your answer is a negative 9. You don't need that 1, so it's m equals negative 9. And of course you can check it. Alright, let's look at number 9. B is being what? Look at the B. It's being divided by negative 4. What else is happening to it? Because here's the separation, there's the B. It's being divided by negative 4, and it's being added by 8. So now we need to reverse those operations. We reverse the add by 8 and do subtract by 8. Then we reverse the divide by negative 4 and we multiply by negative 4. So our first step is to subtract by 8. minus 8 on both sides. This would give you, these are going to go away, and we're going to give you negative 3 on this side because they're different signs and we subtract and take the higher sign. Now we need to multiply by negative 4. Remember, when we put a set of parentheses next to a number, that means multiply. Okay, so we're going to put our 1 under the negative 4. We're going to cross cancel, and we're left with a 1b equals 12. Same signs, your answer is positive. And again, you don't need that 1 in front. And we are finished. And of course, you can check it to make sure that you're doing a good job. All right, now, this time, the p is being subtracted by 18 first. It then is being divided by 2. So what we're going to do is reverse the operations again. Instead of dividing by 2, we're going to multiply by 2. Instead of subtracting by 18, we're going to add by 18. So this gives us our steps. So the multiply by 2 is first. Remember to put your 2 over 1, and then you can cross cancel the 2's, and you're left with p minus 18 on the left side, and on the right side you're going to have negative 4. So we've multiplied by the 2, now we're going to add by 18. And if we add by 18, we end up canceling out the 18 and the negative 18 because it's a 0. And on the right side, they're different signs, so we subtract the numbers and take the higher sign. And so p is equal to 14. And of course, you can check it to make sure that you are doing the right thing. So, what is my goal when solving equations? Well, in order to solve an equation, we want to get the variable. Variable is the x or the b or the s. Get the variable by itself on one side of the equation, or the equal sign. Oh, and I'm sorry, you can't see that. So what is my goal when solving equations? To get the variable by itself on one side of the equation or equal sign. Is there a way I can make sure I get the correct answer? Absolutely. I can check it. And I did that on the one-step equations, but you can do that very same process on the two-step equations as well. The next part, what is the process I need to think of when solving equations? Remember, the process is reverse the operations. You also are reversing the order they are performed. For example, right here, at the beginning, it's being subtracted by 18 and divided by 2. So we're reversing it. And where the division came last, it's actually going to come first in order to reverse it. So we're reversing from the bottom to the top. The divide gets done first, so that's instead of dividing, we're multiplying, and instead of subtracting, we're adding. All right, good luck. Come to tutoring if you need any extra help.